Mayday, 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 mayday. Experimental 1 Delta Whiskey. I don't know where I'm going down, but I'm going down someplace.
David Windmiller is an expert pilot, one of the best in the world. In 2000, he finished 4th at the World Aerobatics Championships in France. On May 2nd, 2013, he suffered severe engine failure during an aerobatics run-through. He was forced to land his Edge 540 aircraft on southbound Route 231 in Suffolk County, New York. Not only did he walk away from the incident unharmed, his airplane was fully intact and he was able to steer it off to the side of the road to prevent any post-landing carnage. On October 10th, 2015, David welcomed us to Republic Airport in Farmingdale, New York. He took us up into one of his aircrafts and he welcomed us into his hangar for a glimpse into his life as a pilot.
Mayday, 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 mayday. Experimental 1 Delta Whiskey. I don't know where I'm going down, but I'm going down someplace.
David, as a lifelong pilot, a couple of years back in 2013, what goes through your mind as you're uttering those words into your headset?
Just another day at the office. Just something didn't go as planned, and time to figure out what to do with the situation as it stands.
Taking a listen to that, the thing that I was amazed by was the calmness in your voice and the tranquility between you and the people on the ground. What allowed you to maintain that sort of calm level while your plane is descending with engine malfunction?
Well, the engine malfunction was really kind of the smaller of the issues. The bigger issue that really didn't come into play was that the propeller left the airplane and it changed the center of gravity and it made the airplane very close to unflyable. Airplane flying has been my entire life. You know, I don't really get into an airplane, I've really become part of it. And through all the years of all of the aerobatics and all of the really pushing limits and the unlimited version of aerobatics, there have been so many failures and so many things that have gone wrong. This was just one more.
So was this something that wasn't uncommon for you? It was something that you felt like you had dealt with before?
Unfortunately, I can claim 22 engine failures in my lifetime. But it was just something that happened, and just you have no choice but to deal with it. You know, you want to make sure you go home at night. So.
Now, as a husband and a father of 5 children, do you have time as the plane is descending, as you're trying to find an emergency landing place? Do you have time to think about whether these moments are going to be the last moments for you, or is it just a matter of trying to walk away?
No, I didn't have any doubt whatsoever whether I was going to walk away or not. Whether I was going to damage the airplane or not was a question. I had to make sure that I wasn't going to hurt anyone on the ground or myself, and that was it.
So there's no doubt in your mind that you're going to survive this?
100%. Yeah. The option was really to jump, but the airplane would have wound up in someone's neighborhood where people would have gotten hurt, so I chose not to jump.
Now, being that you survived and that you're here with us today, as a mechanic, what can you say about what took place, and how do you make adjustments going forward so that things like that don't happen?
Sure. I was part of an experimental engine program for that airplane. That airplane's under experimental category. When I was selected for the United States Aerobatic Team, and that engine, I accepted as a test pilot that we were pushing limits. The limits were pushed a little bit further than I would have liked them to have been, and because of that particular incident, I wound up going to a different manufacturer, and we toned things down quite a bit, and in a very safe condition now, but it was just an accepted kind of risk.
So as somebody who's a mechanic, you've worked on airplane engines, you maintain your own airplane engines. Growing up, you're somebody who raced dirt bikes, motorcycles. I read that anything I could get my hands on with a motor is what you wanted to be involved with. For somebody who doesn't understand what you do in an aerobatics airplane, an airplane with aerobatics capabilities, explain to the layman what the difference is between an engine that's capable of performing those sorts of tasks and one that's a basic 2- or 4-seat airplane.
Sure. In an aerobatic airplane, when you get to the unlimited category, the stresses on the engine are unimaginable. Normal airplane, the torsional load on the crankshaft, which is the main shaft that turns the propeller, is relatively nil. An aerobatic airplane, it's constantly under extreme loads of twisting and bending and jumping all over the place. So in a normal condition, an engine similar to that in a conventional aircraft will go 2,000 hours between teardowns and inspections. In this particular engine, if we made 50 hours, we were happy. So the stress on it is unimaginable.
Now, when you start telling me about the stresses put on the engine when you're in the air, what I think about as someone who's not familiar with engines, I think about the stresses that are put on the human body. Tell me about what it's like to go through that sort of duress in the air.
It almost sounds like I'm toning it down. I've been doing it for so long. The G-loadings that we're subject to as a normal human being on the ground is 1 G. That means that you weigh what you read on the scale when you got on it in the morning. If you were subjected to 2 Gs of acceleration, your body weight increases by a factor of 2. We're exposed in competition aerobatics approaching 13.5 and sometimes even close to 14 Gs, which if you weigh 200 pounds, you're subjected to 2,800 plus pounds of load during that time period. It's a number that most people don't even believe. Military pilots usually don't see more than 7. So people can't imagine how we can survive at those levels. The main reason is the time frame that we're exposed to those levels of G-force is very short in duration, but your body just builds up to it. It's something that you just do for such a long time, and it just becomes just part of it. You don't even think about it.
Earlier this morning in the hangar, you were telling me about what happens, what your heart's reaction is to being exposed to these sort of G-forces.
From what I understand, the heart muscle itself can basically come close to doubling in size when an unlimited pilot is in tip-top shape for a season. Just from the heart having to work so hard to be able to try and force the blood up to the upper portion of your body under high G loading. And it's just like any other muscle, I guess. You know, you work on it hard enough and it builds up.
Now, what helps you out is that you've been in airplanes since you were 14 years old. I'm interested to know, because I read that your father was against you being a pilot, wasn't supportive of it. I'm interested to know how you initially were drawn to flying to begin with.
I wish I knew the answer to that. It was always something I wanted to do. It's something that I think I understood a lot about just from watching airplanes and understanding and seeing pilots fly other airplanes. Something I wanted to do, and I just made my mind up. No matter what it took, that's where I was going.
So by age 14, you're in the cockpit for the first time. At age 16, you lose interest in flying level, and you steered a Piper Cub, which is a simple light airplane, straight upward. You get stuck at the top of a loop. You're hanging from your seatbelt. Oil's pouring out of the engine. The propeller stops. You're able to hold it down long enough to restart the propeller. And from what I understand, the instructor is laughing at this point.
That was something I remember quite vividly. That was an instructor that took me up to check me out in that airplane. It was a Piper Cub. We were just looking to kill some time I had before I got my license. And it wasn't legal at the time, but we kind of broke the rules, and he did a loop in the airplane. And he told me it was something I wasn't allowed to talk about, never allowed to do. So we went back, and he signed my logbook and checked me out. And I was supposed to do takeoffs and landings, and I just went out and did a loop. And I found out that I didn't do as well as I thought I was going to do on the first one.
So this is in an airplane that's not fit for that sort of...
Not certified for any aerobatics, and no harness, just regular seatbelt.
Is this the first time you're exposed to that sort of aerobatic capability?
The first time that I ever left the normal realm of flight, which is basically 60 degrees of bank and 30 degrees of pitch.
Explain to us, we can read about it, we can talk about aerobatics, but for those who haven't been in the plane when those sorts of maneuvers are being performed, explain what aerobatics means to you. How would you define it for yourself?
I think it's more what other people define as aerobatics. To me, that's flying. Flying really is not limited to 60 degrees of bank and 30 degrees of pitch. Flying doesn't even start until the airplane starts doing things other than going from point A to point B, making 2 turns and landing.
So most of us know flying as going to LaGuardia, going to JFK, getting in an airplane and going somewhere else. Straight shot, sometimes you don't even feel it. It seems to me, based on what you've just said, is that flying, the definition of flying and what it's really for you is more of an art form rather than a form of transportation.
I guess I could agree with that statement. Getting from point A to point B is you're basically driving an airplane like you drive a car. I guess an art is probably a good description of it. Flying to me is, becoming part of an airplane and just being able to do things that excite you.
Now, in 2000, you placed in the top 5 in an international competition in France. Tell us about your experience there.
Sure, I made the United States aerobatic team. I was selected in 1999 for the 2000 through 2002 team year and flew the World Championship in France in Murray. And my best finish at the time really was not even planned, was in the freestyle, 4-minute freestyle competition. And I didn't even know that I'd wind up in it. I just made the cut to get in. I just went up and just played. I didn't even have anything written out, and I was 4th in the world. So it's kind of neat.
In 1996, your preparation for the National Aerobatic Competition is suspended because TW-8 Flight 800 crashed, killed 230 people in July of 1996, and your father was one of the victims. So here you are, one of the most accomplished pilots in the world, some would say, with about 8,000 hours of in-flight experience. And your father is killed in the 3rd deadliest aviation accident in U.S. territory. Now, how does that register in the mind of David Windmiller?
It was kind of ironic. My father was against me flying aerobatics. He was not against me flying at that point in time, but against aerobatics. And just a passenger on a flight going over to France for business. And unfortunately, I think a lot of us know what really happened there. And there's nothing you really could say about it. It's just very ironic that he died in a commercial airliner.
It was the most extensive, costly disaster investigation in U.S. history. Some people thought it was a terrorist attack. Eventually it's determined that it was an explosion in the fuel tank and not a terrorist attack. You being someone who not only flies planes but works on engines, do you have any particular reaction to the cause of the crash?
I think all of the families, especially being involved in aviation, are very clear as to what happened there. I think it was a massive U.S. government cover-up, and unfortunately it's quite confirmed that the United States Navy took down that airplane.
In the wake of that incident, how does your relationship with flying change, or does it?
It had no change in my relationship with flying. It was not a mechanical failure. It was not anything that was done wrong by the flight crew. It could have been in a car, it could have been in a boat, it could have been walking through the streets of Manhattan. It had nothing whatsoever in my mind to do with aviation. I was flying the next day.
Do you have any intention of aiming to compete again, or are your days of international competition behind you, and why?
No, I'm going back to competition. We have 5 children, and during their growing up period, it was very selfish to spend months away from the house training every year. Now the kids are getting older, and they're actually pushing me to get back in.
I read that in 1999-2000, when you were competing, there were 6,000 other pilots in the United States who were in the aerobatics realm, if you will, and only 10 of them were qualified to participate internationally. I'm interested to know where you see the future of the sport headed, and what changes you've seen in it in the time you've been involved.
The airplanes themselves, believe it or not, have not improved or changed much over the last 12 to 15 years. The sport itself, I hope, will continue to thrive. I have a fear that with today's electronics and aircraft getting more and more sophisticated, pilots are getting less and less sophisticated to the point where they don't have seat-of-the-pants flying ability anymore. And it bothers me, and that's the reason that I started a flight school, to try and get people back into it. So I hope that I'm going to be one of a few people in this country that take pilots that have no intentions of touching aerobatics and making them realize what it does for you. I think the incident that you brought up at the beginning with 231, it was a no-brainer for me. I never had even a second thought about it, and that's from aerobatic experience. I don't think that the average general aviation pilot, if they lost a propeller and had the center of gravity moved to the point where the airplane on paper is just about unflyable, maybe even unflyable, and they would not have come home at night.
Sean Sims of the FAA said, "Dave flies seemingly impossible maneuvers with a precision that defies imagination. He has the mind of an engineer, physical abilities of a champion athlete, and soul of an artist." What's your reaction?
I appreciate hearing that very much. I hope it's true.